Hey everybody, Tyler with Bedford Camera and Video, and in the studio today we have Tony Krup with Sony. Glad to have you, Tony.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So we are getting into the thick of the holiday buying season. So I know there's a lot of different choices out there. Obviously, you're with the Sony brand, and there's a lot of camera bodies and a lot of lenses to choose from. Could you help us figure out for the different types of shooters out there, what would be best for what they're looking for?
That is my goal for today. So I'm hoping to speak to, throughout this little presentation or talk is what we're doing here is kind of go over from everything from the entry-level beginning vlogging type of camera all the way up through advanced Cine cameras that, that are recording this here, and of course, our legendary Alpha series. And we'll touch even on some of my favorite lenses that we've kind of come out with recently. So
Love it.
And we'll be in store by the time of this. So we are doing a full Sony week. And I'm going to get these dates right, I swear. I know I have it up in front of me.
There we go.
It'll be Sony week officially for Bedford's the week of 12/11 through the 17th. And I want to be in stores.
In person.
In person. So I'll be in Little Rock, Arkansas on the 13th of December. I'll be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 15th, and Oklahoma City on the 16th. So if you're watching this and you come up with questions, all you got to do is come out and see me in person, and I can go over this stuff.
Will you be there all day in those stores?
Well, most likely. I'm not sure if we've set up the times, at least throughout the afternoon. So usually noon to close, something like that, is usually where I try to get to be in store.
Yeah, get the most traffic.
Exactly.
But no, that's great. So bring your questions, bring your camera, and that's another thing. If you feel free to bring your camera, bring a lens that you may be interested in trading in.
Correct. So trading in, that is a good thing because there are a whole bunch of holiday deals going on right now. Trade in, trade up is one of the biggest things that we're doing. And of course, there's going to be all sorts of instant rebates, and you combine those with trade in and trade up to save some significant amount of money.
Absolutely. Because we do trades throughout the year, but we do have brands that want to do this bonus trade-in, trade-up system, and I think that's really where people can maximize the trade-in that they have on their gear. And it really doesn't matter if it's anywhere from something you bought last year and you want to move into the latest thing, something, or maybe even a step up from what you had. But even people who have something that's maybe 10 years old, something you haven't used in a while, so bring it in. There's some really cool trade offers.
Yeah. I mean, it just needs to be working. So something needs to be working, but you can save up to $1,000 on an A1, which is pretty fantastic. $500 on an A7R5, and that's one of the hottest cameras going on right now, and one of my personal favorites. So lots of amazing deals.
61 megapixels, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your mind around that kind of resolution,
It's true, and I'll talk about that a little bit here as we kind of get going. So for the trade-in value, just so you know, essentially you bring in a camera. Bedford's gives you a certain amount of dollars. I'll say $100 for your camera, and it could be worth because my math skills are not all that great. But let's say the camera's worth $100, and you're like, hey, I want to trade this in on an amazing A1, and we'll throw in a bonus $1,000 on that. So it's not just $100; you're getting $1,100 at that point. And again, like I say, the biggest deals on the A1, the A7R5. And of course, there's all sorts of, goes for lenses too, so up to $200 on lenses.
Absolutely. So if you're happy with the body you happen to be using, it may be time to upgrade your lens or add to your kit of that those different lenses. I know we did the intro to Milky Way, so who knows? Maybe you want to shoot something really wide and fast, like a night sky. Who knows?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty sure we've got some of those wide 14 millimeters f1.8. Still one of my favorites.
Fan of that one.
Yeah,
I'm such a fan of that one.
Still one of my favorites on there. So, and then of course, like I say, there's all sorts of instant rebates. And if you want to know for sure, just call up your local Bedford. Say, hey, what's the deals going on right now, but it can be up to $600 off. So pretty amazing deals.
You never know. Maybe maybe if you can get some information out of a loved one that is interested in a certain camera, so make sure they're being specific. So maybe you could take advantage of this trade-in, trade-up offer, so you can get them taken care of and have that done before the 25th gets here, right?
Exactly. Even though it is going throughout the year. So if you get a
Yes,
little bit of
yes.
that holiday money, you can always come the week after.
That's right, because it's through the 31st, right? December 31st. So that's right. Yeah, that's why we have Tony here, to make sure that I'm keeping the information correct. And that's good.
We want some of that after holiday money too. That doesn't hurt so bad. So.
Well, I was always the one that my parents would just give me money. Like if they knew I wanted a big thing, like a lens or a light, they knew exactly. They knew I wanted a specific thing, so they would just give me the money, and I would just hoard that.
I would say once I was a teenager, it was, just give me the money. I can find stuff to do with it. I don't always need socks. And then you realize you need socks, but So, well, I guess, we have a lot of cameras. Mm-hmm. So I get a lot of questions going on, especially this time of year. What's for this, who's this good for? We've got a lot of things, and they all sound very similar. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what I hope to demystify a little bit.
Some of those terms can be a bit confusing, especially if you are new to it or getting into it, or you've borrowed somebody's camera but you don't know what it was called. This is, I know it can be overwhelming, but that's why we're doing this. We want to make sure that you're understanding your needs, you're understanding what you're getting.
Exactly. And usually some of the biggest differences anyway, what's full frame? What's this thing called crop sensor? Is that the same as APS-C? What is, there's differences. And mostly full frame is always just a larger image sensor. Crop sensors, roughly about half of the size that are on there, but they both have advantages for people. For full frame, most of the time the cameras, you get dual card slots, bigger batteries, larger viewfinder, larger robust body, because sometimes, you get bigger lenses and things like that. Having a little bigger body supports the lenses and balances a little bit better. You get better depth of field, so you get that nice blur in the background, bokeh, whatever people call it these days.
Right.
My favorite, bokeliciousness. I may have coined that term, I'm not sure. But crop sensor, there's advantages on there too. They're smaller, they're lighter weight, they still have extremely fast autofocus. You can get up to 11 frames per second, so they can still be a little bit speed demons, and they can just be a great way to start the photographic journey. So always bonuses with that. So other advantages on the crop sensor, reduced rolling shutter, which we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Having a smaller sensor size makes them a little bit faster in things. So for video and rolling shutter and movements, it keeps things a little straighter on there. And of course, the full frame, they're bigger pixels, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. High ISO capabilities or low light capabilities, they look a little bit better, because I know we've all used our cell phone in low light, and we know the noise and the weird things that happen. You don't get that nearly as much with full frame sensors. So definitely some advantages there. But then you got to look at our entire line.
Yes.
Which is, some people can find it a little bit confusing, so that's what I'm here to demystify that just a little bit. We have full frame, they all begin with the alpha. It's alpha everything in the Sony universe. We have everything A1, A9, brand new A9 III, which I'll touch a bit on here. But then we have all these A7 series cameras. And then you see these little nomenclatures like the S, the R, the C's, and then that gets a little more confusing, I suppose. And then the crop sensors, which you'll look at like Alpha 6400 or 6700, and I think we still have 6300s. We have a whole bunch that are out there. But really the biggest trick to these particular cameras is looking at that letter. So if you see S, that's sensitivity. So everything with Sony, every time you see a little letter, usually means something that's out there. So S is sensitivity, and that means it's extremely good for low light capability. And that's I know you're a video guy. The A7S, a lot of video people enjoy using that particular camera because you can shoot at really high ISOs. You don't need a whole lot of lights and things like that for that particular camera. You know, it's a 12 megapixel sensor, so not a whole lot of megapixels when compared to some. It's amazing 4K video, up to 120 frames per second. And of course, you got the A7R, which stands for resolution. So every time you see an R on a Sony camera resolution, you know it's going to be a lot more megapixels than some of the others, and we're up to 61 megapixels. So if you need to blow it up billboard size, things like that, you can. But it's not all about that. You get cropping room. You can zoom in a little bit more. So like our new A7R5, it's 61 megapixels, up to 8K video, which is pretty amazing, which gives you a lot of cropping room and post-production and that. 8K 30 frames per second. And then, of course, you have the regular A7 IV, and we call that the general use, and I'm not sure if I like that term because it's a camera that can do so much more. It's always, to me, the go-to. You know, it does everything quite well. 33 megapixels, 4K 60p or 60 frames per second, and great low light capability. Does everything quite well, and enough megapixels you can still do some cropping and primarily do just about all your needs.
But I feel like it's not a lightweight in any way. It really is quite powerful. Because as someone who used to own the A7 III, I mean, I remember in some of the marketing they were being very, very clever with it. But they said I think it was the basic model or the entry model, because that's what a lot of people tended to call the A7 line was that. But then it's like, you know, the A7 III and now the A7 IV. It's like it's really anything but entry.
Yeah, you know, at one point it might even still be the A7 III was the most used professional camera in the marketplace, and that's we can even go back. There's some amazing deals even on the A7 III since the camera is still around. So that's another one to even kind of look at. Yeah, it just covers a wide gamut of just about everything.
Very much so.
Yeah. And then, of course, you know, if you like all those features and they all sound good, but you want a little smaller camera, now you look at the A7Cs, and the C stands for compact. So very similar feature-wise overall as the A7 IV, 33 megapixels, 4K 60. Very similar camera, just as a smaller body, a little smaller viewfinder, but keeps everything. It's great for travel. You know, we've got some we call the 3 Amigo lenses. They're really small, compact. Put that on there. Street photographers absolutely love it. And then, of course, we have 2 versions of that now. You know, we have the 33 megapixel version. And if you want that resolution, we now have that. So the A7CR. So getting that same 61 megapixel sensor as the A7R5.
And that was a pleasant surprise.
That was a camera that I was not expecting, and honestly, that's the one I get the most questions on right now. Yeah, so many, especially in the street photography world, which to me, I think, oh, maybe I want the low light categories. They're like, no, I want that resolution, and it's been very, very popular. So.
Definitely.
So when you do kind of look at it, like I said, we talk about megapixels all day long, and you know, there's advantages to having low megapixels. There's advantages to having high megapixels. And like I say, with the lower megapixels, so the A7S is only 12 megapixels, and we always say only. Well, professional cameras back in the day were only 12 megapixels, and it still got you by. But the advantage of those are the pixels are so much bigger. So the less pixels you have, the larger they are, and the advantage of that is basically they collect more light. So I always kind of use the terminology of, you know, if you wanted to capture rain, what would you use, a thimble or a bucket,
Right.
And it's kind of the same way with this, the larger that pixel size is, the more information it's getting. You can get really technical and signal to noise ratio and that,
Right.
but you keep it kind of simple and they do much better. So, the max ISO on that is 409,000. Yeah. More than what you need. I've seen some pretty amazing nighttime videos, coming out of this particular camera, and of course, images and that too. Even a lot of astrophotographers,
Very much so.
they'll stack a whole bunch of the images together and do some deep space stuff with this particular camera, and it's pretty amazing.
And you can quite literally see in the dark. It's like just out of reach of like actual night vision. Like it's remarkable if you just have like a little bit of moonlight, how much you're able to see.
Talking with one of the Bedford patrons at PhotoCon, showing me a video he did with it with night vision goggles and this and that, which you can barely see with the human eye, but
Right.
he's using the video and you see the bright green on the face and see everything that's going on, and it was like a military drill type of video,
Right.
but it was just absolutely
Oh,
amazing. Yeah. So. And then, of course, when you look at 33 megapixels, you can call that the general use. I kind of covers everything. So events, weddings, fantastic video, all of that. It just covers everything. And then when you get a whole bunch of megapixels, those are always great, for doing landscapes and nature and allow you a lot of cropping room and editing capability because it's a lot of information. You can push and pull and have a ton of information. And, of course, if you are a commercial photographer or something like that, you can blow it up billboards and do a lot of composites and taking out little sections and putting it and combining them to a final piece. You have the resolution to be able to do that.
Well, and it's my understanding that with this 33 megapixel sensor, in many ways, it's still even cleaner than the 24 megapixel sensor that was before it, right?
Yeah, and advancements of sensor technology and processing, and because every image, it goes in and processes all this stuff, and the cameras get faster and faster with their processing and able to take out a little bit more and keep the images cleaner. So, yeah, they get better and better. And again, even at 61 megapixels, I shoot a lot of really low light. I'm known for macro, and I tell people I'm at 10,000 ISO all the time, and I'm okay with that. It still looks good. A little cleanup post process still looks fantastic.
And you remember the days of shooting anything over 800 ISO. You're like, yeah, you're just crossing your fingers that it looks halfway decent on a print.
Yeah, and I remember this thing called film, even though that being said, everybody's shooting film again. It's kind of coming back. But still, when 800 ISO came out, you're like, oh, thank you. I can do so much more. So, yeah, going up to 12,800, and like on an S, that's clean.
Oh, yeah.
That is pretty amazing. So then we get into the stacked sensor cameras, which is a little bit different, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But you get into, we'll call them into the more professional type of cameras. So the Alpha 1 or the A9 III, which is our brand new one, and those are considered stacked sensor cameras. And what you get from there, speed. It's all about speed. At the A1, you're looking at 50 megapixels, up to 30 frames per second at full 50 megapixels, which is insanely fast. Getting that 8K video with 30 frames per second with minimal rolling shutter at that aspect. And now with the A9 III, kind of breaking down 120 frames per second, which is
In full res.
at full res, full raw, uncompressed raw, 120 frames per second, 4K video 120 with no crop. And, again, built for speed, 24.6 megapixels. Not exactly out yet, but you can pre-order it now at bedfords.com.
Yes.
And it will be available February.
Yes.
I think I put spring here, but it will be available in February. No exact date as of the launch of this, but it will be in February.
And this is a new sensor. This isn't a one that we've seen in the past. This is a from the ground up new sensor.
From the ground up. So we'll start from the basics. So when you look at kind of the sensor technologies in the camera, and most cameras these days are what they call a BSI sensor, or backside illuminated sensor, and then you have the high quality and the speed demons called a stacked sensor. And really, when you look at BSI sensor, really what it means is the original sensor design. They had, the lenses on top, and then you had some metal wiring, and then you had the photodiode, which actually collects the light, but you had the wiring kind of in front of it, which blocks out a little bit of light.
Right.
So with backside illuminated, basically they take that wiring, put it underneath, and now it collects more light. So they're a little better in lower light. And at this point, it's pretty much most cameras will now have that. So all the A7 cameras, all the A6000 crop sensor cameras are all using this technology. So then we came out with this thing called stack sensor, in which, without getting too complex, it's more or less separating the sensor into different layers and kind of putting a memory layer in there that's able to pull the information real quick, kind of store it and send it out very quickly. But what that does is essentially make the sensor faster overall. So sensor design, they write from top to bottom quickly all the way up and down. Usually the more megapixels you have, the slower the sensor can write all those megapixels. The less you have, the faster they typically go. And then you have stack sensor that's extremely fast, and get the benefit of those 30 frames per second, up to 120. But now we're getting into a very special sensor, which is a stack sensor. And you get the global shutter stacked sensor. And global shutter is one of those things. I mean, if you're old enough to remember when cameras actually had that back in the 30s and 40s, way back when, it's now coming back to the digital world. But global shutters are extremely fast. Well, it's writing all at once. But like I say, standard sensors, they start from top to bottom and go. Now it exposes everything at once. So the advantage of that is
reduced rolling shutter in terms of, like, especially for sporting events.
I can't even say reduced.
Oh no, it's gone.
Exactly.
I'm having to get used to this, folks. Like I'm still used to saying, oh, it's even faster. It's faster readout. No, this is the fastest it can go because it's getting all the, because I remember CCD sensors on video, and those were global as well, just how the circuitry worked and everything like that. Then you went to the CMOS sensors, and that was reading from top down, left to right. And so you caught me. I'm still, it's just that it's that memory of I'm having to sort of make excuses in a way. I hate to put it that way, but it's going to take a while for me to get used to that.
Yeah, and this is just one of those things where it is kind of revolutionizing the industry kind of deal, because there isn't anything else out there that's doing that, and we're not used to it. I didn't think it was really going to ever happen. But yeah, so there's no rolling shutter. Other advantages you get, I mean, typically, so when you use a mechanical shutter, you don't get things like, rolling shutter, number one, you don't get that. Right. But when you're shooting video, there isn't a shutter that keeps up with 30 frames, so you're shooting an electronic shutter. The advantage with the electronic shutter, you're at 30 frames per second, or now up to 120 frames. But you can start getting pulses of lights, which can cause banding throughout the image.
Concert photographers are battling that now.
Yeah. And you don't get that with the mechanical shutter, but if you do need the electronic, that is something that you can possibly get. And like I say, to get to those super, mechanical shutters can't go 30 frames per second. They'll just, disintegrate, moving so fast. So you have to use that electronic. So that's why you don't see it in a lot of cameras unless it's the stacked sensor that's on there. So one of the advantages, back up here. So you can get banding. So stack sensors in general, you get very reduced banding. I always say reduced because if you go to a fast enough shutter speed, you can start picking it up again.
Right, because that's to do with the frequency of that light. But if you're using mixed light, well, you're battling multiple different frequencies, and finding that right shutter speed can be an issue.
Exactly. So, and now with global shutter, you don't have to worry about that. And the camera's just smart enough to analyze the pulses and things like that to where it'll time the shutter to where it sees the maximum, where the maximum light is. So, banding, gone. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Difficult lighting just does not matter.
Well, I'm also thinking of people who are photographing golf or tennis or lacrosse, something with, some sort of stick or some sort of,
Something that's moving very fast.
Extremely fast.
Yeah, and that's where the original A9 was the first stack sensor to come out. And that's the golf world was like, we can now shoot silently, so we can do it in the backswing while we're shooting and without distortion, because you could do silent before that, but those are a little slower shutters. You get quite a bit of distortion, and now you didn't get that. And again, this just takes it to the next level. You want to stop a bullet? All right, you can now do that. You can shoot up to 1/80,000th of a second with global.
If you can time it right.
Yeah, if you can time that right. So
can you imagine for archery though?
Yeah,
man,
you're now. Like I said, and the other greatest thing about it is no flash sync speed is no longer. It's the thing of the past. You can shoot full power flash at any shutter speed, and that I can't wait to see some of the creative possibilities with that. Because I mean, now we have a thing called high speed sync, which is, you can go to fast shutter speed, but your flash power gets reduced tremendously. So now you can shoot, 8,000th of a second full power flash, and, you need a quarter of the amount of light that you needed in the past to be able to do that. So it'll open up a lot of possibilities. I can't wait to start playing with it.
And can you imagine some of the celebrations after these major ball games where there's flashes going off on different angles at different times, because they're not all going off at the same time. There may be some overlap, but I'm excited for some of the victories that are happening after some of these games. Whether that's Major League here in America or even with the upcoming Olympics next year. So I think that's going to be very exciting to see the results coming out of those who shoot that A9 III.
Exactly. And actually, after even talking to people since this announcement, wedding photographers are just like, I can shoot outdoor weddings and fill in and do it easily, have lights much farther back than you would and be able to fill in some, difficult lighting situations and that. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to
change the industry, and that's not just a marketing term. It really, from an engineering standpoint, it's going to change a lot.
Yeah. So look forward to it. It's coming out in February. Pre-order now.
Pre-order now, folks.
Yeah. So we have another line of cameras. So now we've kind of talked full frame, crop sensor, but then we have this special line of cameras called the ZV line, which is more on the video side, more on the vlogging side. So they typically have a few more video features. And of course, we have full frame version of that with the ZV-E1, crop sensor version, the ZV-E10, and then the 1-inch sensor. 1-inch stack sensor, which a lot of people don't realize in that particular one, the ZV-1 Mark II and the ZV-1F. Those are all, it's just kind of a matter where your starting point is on the vlogging, side, or just video in general. They're great for just standard clips for social media. Use them as your webcam. Use them. Good all around. I know the ZV-1 line, I talk to a lot of teenagers who are, want to be the next star, out there, holding their little tripod out, talking to the camera, smashing that like button, doing the in thing. Great starter camera for that. And again, so they got the 1-inch kind of starter. The one you can grow with a little bit is kind of where I put that ZV-E10 because it's an interchangeable lens,
Right.
using the same mount as the most advanced, video cameras that are out there. Something to get you started in there and, grow with. And then the ZV-E1 that can be kind of fairly professional even. That's using the same sensor as the A7S III, 12 megapixels.
Yes.
Great low light capability. What's kind of nice about it with all these cameras, they have built-in microphones. It's a little nicer than the standard, even on like the ZV-1 and the ZV-E1, a multi-directional microphone. So you can set it to only pick up things in front of the camera, or if you're talking behind the camera, only pick up what you're saying or pick up everything, so you can kind of adjust things that way. So, again, they're just a little more designed on the video side, but yet still make good photo cameras too. So the ZV-1 especially, pocket size, small with zoom or without zoom with the ZV-1F, and you can put them in your pocket. They're small, lightweight, will do a little better job than your phone typically.
Oh yeah.
And especially with the mic and all that capabilities.
You can still shoot raw stills on these, right?
Oh yeah. So like I say,
that's a major advantage.
The only thing they don't have is a built-in viewfinder. So if you can put up with the screen on the background, again, the photo quality is amazing. And the autofocus tracking and that, like I say, the ZV-1 Mark II and the 1F, they're stacked sensors. The autofocus on it are amazing. Super fast sensors. They track the eye. I always say it's more or less like the A9 autofocus system built into a little point-and-shoot camera, and work really, really well. But yeah, so for those cameras, great for people starting out who want to do, YouTube videos or some social media reels, or even just, at home as your new work webcam. They all work really, really well with that. What else do we have? Cinema-Line.
Ooh. Now I'm excited.
Yeah, I would say now we're getting to your level here. The Cinema-Line, which I'll touch in. This is getting up on the high-end side, but with the Cinema-Line cameras, obviously cinema, they're designed for video, and a little more on the professional video side. The most common, the FX3, the FX30 would be the crop sensor version of the FX3, which would be the full frame version. And then we can go into the more production FX6, FX9, Venice. I wouldn't mind one of those. They're doing a lot of the motion pictures these days.
Yes, a lot of shows, and obviously a lot of movies, including one very very successful movie that came out.
This one
Just this one that was not very well known, in the 80s, but no, I'm just playing.
The Top Gun Maverick, yes, was done on the Venice there. But then you look at the FX3, which is full frame, sub $4,000 camera doing a full length movie, The Creator, which is out in theaters right now, which is pretty amazing.
Oh, well, and that was the thing. People were worried, is this a marketing gimmick? And then you hear, Gareth Edwards, the director, who is also very much also a camera operator. He's a very hands-on, quite literally kind of guy when directing that. And he was asked, as well as their TP, why did you do this? Was this just because you could? He goes, no, it was purely a practical reason.
Yeah, and that's same thing. I've been watching interviews and that he's like, I was doing test footage and getting that, and he's like, that's my rig. It was small, it was lightweight, I'm handheld, and he goes, and then I just realized that's the look I was after. I needed a small rig and be able to handheld and small, and it keeps the production way down and faster and move and. Just have several rigs, small, switch real quick, and it worked, and the footage looks amazing. So
Definitely.
So, and it could be yours.
Yes, exactly.
Very easily. So amazing quality. So some of the big advantages on the Cine line, of course, a dual base ISO, which basically means in S-Log footage. If you're not familiar with that, it is a learning term, but you can shoot at ISO 800 or 12,800 on the FX3 anyway, and have the same quality footage. You know, clean ISO at 12,800 is pretty amazing. You know, they give you all the S-Log and S-Cinetone color profiles that kind of Sony's known for. Built-in cooling fans when you get up there, so you can run really long footage without any overheating.
Right.
And then, you know, just little things, just button layout, you know, custom design for video. 422 10-bit color. Now we're getting technical, I know.
Yeah, but you're shooting that internally.
Internally, correct. Or externally, you can do the 4K 16-bit raw output. So there you need a recording a device, but still quite capable.
That can easily be mounted using the top handle, or not with the top handle because of the quarter 20 threads on it, which I don't think I'm seeing any other brand do that.
No, and that's what's kind of nice, because I show that to people all the time, and I'm like, you want to keep your rig a little bit smaller? You can plug it directly into the camera, have a little microphone set up, you know, just anything to keep smaller and lighter. I know the older I get, the more I appreciate smaller and lighter. So, I don't know. Anything else on cameras you think
I think you've touched on a lot. But there's been so many things that have been added to these cameras, and it's really snowballed into the latest iteration of what you showed us on that chart. Is a lot of these features are on most of these cameras. I mean, it's really incredible what you can do even with the smaller cameras.
Well, and that's the thing. It's kind of like, you know, when I talked about S-Cinetone, you know, that's color profile that came from the Venice, our top. You know, it's dedicated just for skin tones, and that's it's just a look that kind of everybody's been after, and it's just now coming down throughout the line. Find it on some of the, you know, ZV-E1 entry-level type of camera now, and it's just kind of amazing how that technology filters down into everyday things and do some amazing work at a decent price point without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars like the cinema people do. So, all right, let's get into lenses a little bit. So, you know, lenses, one of the greatest thing, you know, we talk about all these different cameras, and there's such a wide variety out there. The best part about it is they all use one mount. So the Sony E-mounts, one mount, even that Venice fancy cinema camera, E-mounts, all the way down to entry-level ZV-E10, kind of on the point-and-shoot little video. They can all use the same lenses. We're up to, I think, officially 73 to 75 lenses at this point. Sony has the most mirrorless lenses in the marketplace. Been doing a little longer than a lot of the people out there, but yeah, no matter if it's, you know, stills, photo, you know, professional, amateur, there's a lens for you. I always kind of tell people there's a reason why we have that many lenses, because each lens is designed for a specific purpose or style of shooting per se, whether it's smaller, lighter. Sony, you know, they've got 4 different grades of lenses. You have the standard Sony, which is kind of your entry level, balance of quality and affordability, as they say. You know, great to get you started in there. And then you can kind of go that next step up with the legendary Zeiss lenses. You know, Carl Zeiss has been around for a long time, great lens manufacturer, designer, and that. So that's kind of taking that next level up there. And now that you get into the Sony G series lenses, and those, again, taking even up a little bit, next level. The latest G series lenses, I tell people I'm still just blown away with the sharpness, speed of autofocus, features you're getting out of the lenses. Of course, the price starts going up as you go with these, but still excellent resolution, excellent blur in the background, bokeh. And then you go to the G Master, which is the top quality, you know, the top resolution, the top speed of focus, durability, all of that, you know, that's just the top end of what Sony does. And if you're ever looking at a lens on there and you see a little G, because G Master will have the same G, but if it's a orangish G, that's the good stuff, the real good stuff.
Top end.
Yeah, and you also notice a little bit on the price
Sure.
when you get to the G Master lenses too.
It's an investment.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been coming out with some just really kind of, this year coming out with a bunch of lenses. And some of my favorites I always just put out there because this is one that not a lot of people really notice, but the 20 to 70 millimeter f4 G series lens, again, very sharp, but it's a unique focal length.
Yeah.
20 millimeters, most go 24 to 70 or even 28 to 70, maybe even in there. But 20 gives you that nice wide angle. It's super small. It's lightweight. Not super expensive out there, but it's become one of my favorite lenses. I've always kind of said, I've been kind of a lens snob. I like you have 2.8 lenses, they're better, they're sharper, but now, f4 lens, small, lightweight, still super sharp, fast enough focusing, all that. Coming some of my favorites. Again, I'm getting older, and I like the little bit of the lightweight, and this has rapidly become one of my favorite lenses.
I'm even thinking for people who are doing travel vlogs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wide enough that you can easily arm's length put that out there. But if you want to focus on details, and even the close focusing ability of that lens is still very impressive.
Yeah, and I would say I actually put it in my macro presentation because I have a picture of a fly that is pretty unbelievable coming from a particular lens like this. I was using extension tubes, and I was about an inch away from the fly. But that is one of our closest focusing lenses that's not a macro. Mm-hmm. So actually it is the closest focusing that's not a macro. But then we can talk about macro, which is another one of my favorite lenses that just came out here within the last couple of months, and that's the 70 to 200 f4 GOSS Mark II macro. It's also our longest named lens that's out there, and has rapidly become one of my favorites. What's with this one? It's a macro lens throughout, 70 to 200 millimeter. It's a 1 to 2 macro, or a half macro, as they say. But if you throw a 2x teleconverter on it, it's a 1 to 1 macro. But now you're at a 400 1-to-1 macro. And I know if this sounds weird to you, if you are a macro shooter, you'll understand this a little bit more. Or look for me doing macro classes out there. But it's pretty amazing. It gives you all the great features like optical steady shot. It's very small and lightweight. Everybody who picks this lens up is like, wow, this is a great size. I've had a lot of video people even go, even on a rig when I need a longer one, without having a lens that's good size.
And lighter weight.
Yeah.
Because if you're using a gimbal, a motorized gimbal on that, you're going to save your arms.
And I've seen people use a gimbal on that one too. So I was at the launch event for this one, and there was a couple of guys had it on a gimbal, and they're like, I can do this. This is amazing. Sign me up for it. So again, it's super sharp, fast focusing, just becoming a amazing lens. So, and that's what I always say. It's one of my favorites for doing butterflies and dragonflies in that, because you can still get very close. Those larger objects, even without a teleconverter, works fantastic. Then, of course, you have just the legendary G Master 2 lenses. And I kind of throw these out there because, well, we've just kind of redesigned them. They're all on version 2 now. We have a 16 to 35 millimeter, we have a 24 to 70, and 70 to 200. And, all I can ever say about them, they're smaller, lighter, faster, sharper, and there's nothing wrong with that. Right. That's how I want my lenses, and just how they're improving on the technology and sharpness and resolving power of these lenses, and making them smaller and lighter, adding aperture rings and all these extra features in them. And most of them are on kind of on sale on the trade-in, trade-up. So these are ones to upgrade to for sure. I don't know. Anything else? You remember any other lenses out there that I probably should have mentioned? Or all right, so let's talk about some of the new technologies. And I didn't kind of include this with going through the cameras, because now so many of the cameras have these technologies. Now it's like, well, this has this has this, but we're coming out with new technologies. Everything's always getting better, but now it seems like this year it's just kind of gone boom. The next level of the technologies have really improved. I asked you earlier before we get on here, I'm like, what's your favorite thing, with mirrorless technologies and that? And you're like, well, eye autofocus might be it. And that to me, one mirrorless for me, for sure, just being able to nail an eye no matter what and have the camera focus where I want it to be for people and now animals and birds and the advances of it. It's my favorite thing for mirrorless technology.
And I found it to be true with every iteration of firmware and every iteration of these new cameras, new sensors, the processing, about how quickly it's processing is that, and I know other brands are doing eye autofocus as well, but I'm honestly constantly amazed at how far away the subject can be in the frame and it still choose the eye over the face. Obviously, you get to a certain point, it has a hard time discerning the eye to the face, so it'll go to the face. But I was amazed at how far someone can be, and it still identify the eye.
Exactly, and that's kind of thing that, well, as we evolve in technology, if you kind of look at the autofocus history, you look at DSLRs, and they saw this pixelated mess for the most part. They could kind of tell there was a face, and be able to expose a little bit for the face. But then they, came out with this thing called face detection and smile shutter, which is technically AI based. Those came out in handy cams, so the camcorders, and then the little point and shoot cameras. So this is like a technology that evolved from the low end stuff and moved its way into the upper. And then again, the A9 always seems to be that revolutionary camera. So when that came out, it now takes it up to real-time tracking and with subject recognition. But now it's also looking at color, the depth, the patterns, So if a person wasn't looking at you and it doesn't see an eye, it would drop down, So if you're shooting sports, you get a guy in a soccer field and it's tracking its face, but he turns around, then it'll drop and grab the jersey and continue tracking. And then just able to detect, from left and right eye autofocus and that. But then this magic thing came out this year called AI autofocus. And that's, again, taking that subject recognition to, it does everything that the previous does, but now takes it to another level. So it's not just, person no longer has to be looking at you for it to recognize that it's a human face. It now recognizes nose, eyes, ear, neck, shoulders, elbows, and knows it's a person in any situation. And I always struggle talking about it just because you don't know how good it is until you start using it for a while, and then you go back to it a little older, and because I do that a bit. I'll pick up the A7 IV, which doesn't quite have this technology yet in it. And I'll go, why isn't it picking up this person, even though their face is half, covered up? Where the AI autofocus, they can now have a helmet on.
Yes.
Shooting weddings, and with the veil, it kind of sees through the veil and still grabs the eye. So it just picks up things, even if the subject is obscured somehow. And it's pretty amazing once you get used to it. But it's not always just about, people. Animals. It picks up animals, birds, insects. So it works really well for things that it's programmed for. And I say programmed for because that's part of what the AI means. It's not I know some people are like, oh, it'll learn, the more I'm shooting. Not quite, but it means you can program it to detect more things in the future, type of deal. So that makes it more of the AI portion. But for butterflies, dragonflies, bees, it's programmed for. Let the camera do the work. It sits and focuses and tracks and does that. Even I still don't get, I've got a lot of animals in my house, and, even with the fur ball, a cat, it recognizes it's a cat and knows where the head's at, even when they're not looking at you. It's kind of crazy. It's almost creepy how well it picks it up. And then we added, car, plane, trains, modes. And I always kind of tell people, because I get a lot of automotive photographers and that. I'm like, no, you could have 10 people in front of a car. If it can kind of see the car at all, it's locked onto the car, ignores the people, and, will continually track it. It's pretty unbelievable what it does. I can talk about marketing fluff and this and that, but I'm always a realist, and I'm like, no, I will tell you, it works, and it works amazingly well. Another kind of cool feature we're starting to introduce in these cameras, focus bracketing, which... a lot of people say focus stacking, but that's not always the proper term. So focus bracketing is when the camera will adjust focus for stacking them later to get everything in focus. So landscape photographers will sometimes use this if they want to, get the entire scene in focus, when you can have, that bush right up in front and the background in focus. You can use it for that. Macro photographers, it's a big thing with them, because when you're dealing with macro and shallow depth of field, you can, no matter what aperture you're shooting at, you can't get everything in focusing. Right. So you can take up to 299 shots at, like say in the case of the A7R5, it's 61 megapixels, and with the external software stack them all together. But basically this option is, the camera automatically adjusts the focus for you. Where in the past, you'd have to use a manual rail, and time consuming and easy to mess up. And this just makes it a lot easier. So
I'm sure a lot of product, especially small product like jewelry and watches, wearables, things like that, I'm sure they are loving this. But it is really remarkable in the age where we are now, where online buying is it's the norm. Where we're used to having something sent to our house, but when we're making those decisions on that product, on that thing we're going to put in our hands, or that necklace we're going to wear, seeing that detail, seeing that quality that we're wanting.
Another kind of new feature that's kind of popped up. I can't remember which camera it started on. I think it was the ZV-E1.
I believe you're right.
But it's called auto framing, and this is for the video people or the one person show, where you can just set a camera up on a tripod, and the camera will do all the framing for you. So you can carry on with whatever you're doing. So let's say if you're showing off a product and you're walking around, and it's kind of, you can look at the back of the camera and you see this white box kind of zoom in, and you can program it to go, I want a head shot, I want a medium shot, I want a full body shot. Or you can tell it to cycle through those, and it'll look like you have a camera, someone behind the camera adjusting everything for you, and you set it like every 15 seconds to zoom in and kind of zoom back out, and it maintains resolution throughout unless you get really, really small into the frame. And it just does everything automatically. I've been playing around with this a bit, doing little guitar videos and that, and just have it kind of zoom in and out, and creates a little bit of motion, and it's great. You can just set it up and let the camera do the work for you. As you're talking social media, and look like you have a production going on behind you, and it's all built in with the camera, and you can set how fast it goes, how slow it goes.
And it does a good job of dampening from when it's pulling all the way out and zooming all the way in. So it's not going immediately. It's not like stepping into that zoom out. If you've ever used any editing software without something like that built in,
it's not jarring and
exactly. It looks digital. It looks like it was artificial. It really does. It again, this is just like we're talking about. It is one of those things that you have to try it to really believe how well it works.
Yeah, like I say, adjust it the way. There's so many adjustments to it, and you can just adjust how well and how it works. I find slower the smoother it goes, but if you really wanted to go, it does a great job. So another one, we'll stick on the video side, a new feature that I just find most people don't quite realize. And at first when it came out, I didn't fully understand what it is. It's an easier way to focus. It's a feature called focus mapping. And really what that does is makes your screen look all crazy. You know, it turns everything blue that's behind your subject, turns everything red that's in front of your subject, and then everything that's in focus will turn black and white, so you can kind of see everything. You know, at first, when I was used to focus peaking, which isn't an option where it highlights the sharpest points and you can focus that way. And this is a version of that, but a little looser format, I guess. But the more production people I have that use this are speaking very like, yeah, I don't use peaking anymore. This is the feature that I'm using because it's easier and really highlights. Just a little faster, a little easier, and I can dial it in much quicker this way. Especially, well, to me, the rare times I manually focus in video anymore because the cameras are so good in autofocus. I'm like, yeah, it's better than me. I don't practice at this, but those times when you do need to manual focus, it's easy to do. And this will be on limited number of cameras, but FX30, ZV-E1, but again, fantastic feature. And then the other thing I get where most people don't realize is that you can use all these cameras as your web camera. Almost every Sony camera now you can be used as a webcam. As simple as plugging in a USB. There are some certain settings you have to go. I always just say read the directions carefully. Turn on this feature, off this feature sometimes. But once you get it set up, it's very easy, and you'll look great on on your office web.
Right.
You know, I always say I use an FX3 with the 50mm one too, is, you know, for my webcam, and people look at me like, why? And I'm like, just because I can.
Why not?
And it works. You know, it works great. But even, you know, the basic point and shoots like the ZV-1, still going to make your you know, look good on your office meetings and that, better than the typical built-in webcam.
Well, and even if your home office doesn't look very good, you know, the background of it, you know, like I know some of the ZV cameras, it has that background blur button. So if you don't want to worry with any of the settings, but you still want to not let everyone see all the stuff behind you, it does a good job of minimizing that. And I mean, heck, you could even do the same thing on, you know, an FX30 or an FX3 and using a really fast lens. It makes it look really good. It's going to be light years better than what's built into your laptop.
And I suppose it does have the touch up your face feature built into a lot of these too. I haven't quite gone that far. I can get away with it. I'm a guy. But maybe one of these days I need to just start using it. But lots of really cool little features like that. And then, especially the brand new ones, you can now live stream just using, you know, plug into your iPad or your tablet or your phone, and live stream straight from the camera is just a plug and play. Which, honestly, I haven't set that up yet. I don't do a lot of the live streaming, but I know when you set it up on the computer, it is just plug and play and go. So that is just kind of a cool little new feature, and without all the setup, and that's kind of the important part about it. They're just making it very, very easy, even for the technology challenged people out there. So
I have seen some people using that live streaming capability in the field with an iPad or an iPhone or some other tablet that has data built in, and they will film or stream the Little League game for family members who aren't able to make it, or maybe it's you know, could be hours away for some of these, you know, junior high games,
or like a baby shower or something like that. Weddings, you've been seeing that get quite a bit. You know, oh, my family member can't make it, or they're in Germany, and you know, we're getting married here. You can do that, the live streaming straight from a camera and have it look good. That's kind of the important part about it too.
And it's from a camera that you may be using for not that purpose. So it's a multi-purpose. These are really all multi-purpose cameras, because I know in the past, I actually went on a trip many years ago, and this was Wi-Fi was just starting to get into some of the cameras, and my camera didn't have Wi-Fi, so I had to use my phone for certain things that I knew I was going to email out or put on Dropbox, and then I had to take my other camera, my DSLR at the time, and I just constantly think, okay, is this a printing image or is this a send to family back home image? And now I don't have to think about it. It's something I'm already using for either myself or for work, and now I can use it for my webcam. I can use it for that ball game or for that wedding. And how cool is that?
Yeah, well, and that's that you bring that up too, because you can connect them all to your phone now and download a quick image to be able to text or email really fast, high quality image, and just making life so much easier, all with the simple apps and that.
And you can even push over the full res, not just the 2 megapixel for Instagram.
Do the RAW and all that. I don't have that much space on my phone anymore, unfortunately. So I'm always, but it's a quick, 2 megapixel grab, and I always say my Instagram account. That's where I get a lot of those images, really fast. So. But otherwise, that's about all I have. I think we covered a pretty wide range and hopefully answered some questions on the differences of cameras, the advantages of some of the cameras anyway.
Definitely. But if you do have more questions and you happen to be in Little Rock, Tulsa, or Oklahoma City, very shortly, you'll see Tony there in store.
Yes. Sony Week, December 11th through 17th. And again, I will be at these locations: Little Rock, 12-13. Tulsa 12-15, Oklahoma City 12-16. I'll be showing off. I'll tell you all about the great deals that are going on. Save up to $600 in instant rebates on some of these cameras. Yep. The trade-in, trade-up, which has been fantastic if you have an older camera. And it doesn't have to be Sony. It can be any brand that's out there.
As long as it works.
As long as it works, and save up to $1,000, which is pretty incredible, and get money for whatever you bring in. So that's even the best part of it. So
definitely take advantage of that if that's something that you're wanting to, especially if you're wanting to look into, especially some of the higher end stuff, because that could save you a significant amount, or just make it a lot easier. And again, that goes through December 31st. So if somebody knows what they want, or maybe they don't know what they want, but they know they want a new Sony camera. They know they want to go into something else or into a higher level camera than what they're currently using. December 31st. So you have plenty of time. Well, Tony, thank you again for your time. And again, if you have any questions, you want to see these things in person, again, please visit us in store, and we want to get you taken care of.